Well, I feel like I'm sitting amongst my heroes here. I have Erin West and Matt Hogan finally in the same room together to talk about all things from crypto scams to just the heinous crimes that are committed to we're seeing this new focus on asset recovery. Is this going to change things at a local level? I can't think of two better people to talk to sort of dig into this a little bit more. So thank you both so much for joining me. Matt, because it's your first time on Season Desist, can I ask you to give a bit of and obviously pinnacle of your career, you're very welcome. Can I ask you to introduce yourself, buddy, and just tell people what has got you to the lofty heights of joining us for this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here with you guys. So I'm a detective with our state police here in Connecticut in the U.S. And I am a co-founder of our state police's cryptocurrency working group, and I'm on our task force for the Secret Service's financial crimes. So
Super. And the person that needs no introduction, but just in case someone's been living under a rock, Erin, what are you up to?
I'm Erin West. I was a local prosecutor for 26 years, and I had the immense benefit of being connected to a local high-tech task force of detectives doing amazing work. And so I learned a lot from them. And in the last 3 years of my career, we were inundated with scams at an unprecedented scale that were really destroying people. And so I became really passionate about understanding the scamdemic and ultimately retired from my job to fight it full time at my nonprofit Operation Shamrock.
whoop whoop.
Yeah, and this is why I was so keen to get the both of you on because I mean we all lots of people talk about wanting to make a change, but not many people go outside of their sort of 9 to 5 to do it. And they all agree it's abhorrent and everyone wants things to change, but it's quite rare that people go, do you know what, I'm actually going to do something about it. Whether it's starting with building a network, whether it's actually leaving your job, whether it's just getting your sleeves up and actually going and doing something about it is such a big thing. So on behalf of the world, thank you both for that. I think, Erin, it might be a good place to start sort of with you as an almost as an update. I know a reminder for anyone listening. There's the whole point of this podcast is to talk about the asset recovery ecosystem, and there is absolutely no point. Asset recovery has not been successful if the victims don't get their stuff back. Kind of the whole point. Like people forget that about FATF. Like the core point of FATF is to deprive criminals of their illicit assets. It's not to stop money laundering. It's to stop money laundering to get their stuff off them. Otherwise, they keep trillions in illicit financial flows. So I'm very passionate about, and the victims can be individuals, but it can also be society. It can be the devastating sort of wider impact. It can also be actual countries and states and continents. Like, so the victim in the sort of in the royal sense of the word is vast, but fundamentally that is the asset recovery that we all sort of know and we talk about. Could you bring us up to date? Because some folks, and of course give us a bit of background on Shamrock, but so much has changed since we last spoke. And I fundamentally, as you said, the scamdemic has changed. Could you give someone that knows nothing about it a bit of a 101 on sort of where we are today?
You bet. So this started in the United States in 21 and 22, and but it started in Asia prior to that. But in 2021, 2022, the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, we started to see solicitations on email or primarily in text messages or invitations to be friends with people on LinkedIn or on the Meta platform that were actually scammers. And they were starting these relationships to invest over time. It was a long con where we want to build a relationship with you and create such a trust that when we ask you to do something you wouldn't ordinarily do, like invest in cryptocurrency, we show you that we've done it, and so it's okay, and we're in love, and this is going to work. And so it was an amazingly successful and continues to be an absolutely devastating amount of money being stolen from all over the world and routed to transnational organized criminals.
I don't know if you can see it or not. I got this yesterday. And
what does it say, Matt?
It says, "Are you free next week? Let's go hiking together." And then I got this one yesterday. can we have a short talk? And then I also got, hi, my name is Jennifer from Partners in Peace. I'm reaching out to understand how you view people in Israel.
Wow.
All within three days.
See, Matt, I think that's super important because that's what I'm seeing too, is a little bit of a change in the in the text that you're saying. I just pulled together 3 texts that I got this week, and one of them was a sort of a come on for an investment. The next one, and this one really made me nervous, is, hi, this is Jessica from the, and it's always Jessica. And if you ever meet anybody named Jessica, she's a scammer. But it says, hi, this is Jessica.
But please, no Jess Peck. We mean no offense.
Oh, absolutely not. No,
Yes.
AUSA, Jess Peck. No, we know you're not a scammer. But this is Jessica from the Amazon Holiday Appreciation Program support team. We're reaching out to select Amazon customers to participate in it. And it goes on at the things that you could get: gift cards, cash rewards, AirPods. I could see this working. I could see people thinking, oh, Amazon seasonal stuff, I could use some extra cash around the holidays. And so, and Matt's one about Israel, like there are people there are things that will get people to respond, and that's all they're doing. They just want to start that conversation because Jessica really, really wants to drop me a picture of herself.
Do you know, actually, that might be it's a slight sort of pivot to what I initially thought we could sort of talk about, but there's so much to be said on this topic. If we almost think of it as unpacking like the different actors' perspective in this, because I think it will be quite like enlightening for a lot of people thinking about it sounds sort of silly, but like the role of the victims and what we see, and then the role of the actual people carrying out the scam. Then there's the infrastructure and the enablers, because someone doesn't turn up and build a compound with 200 other people. There's a gang, there's a coordination behind that, and it's not some the typical the dodgy guy at the end of the street. These are organized, sophisticated corporations, the way they're actually run. But I think some people, and Matt, I know that you reference this a lot on LinkedIn, both of you have, and Erin, you just made the point, it's like this, the long con, which has been around for decades, but the combination of COVID, everyone being online, and even as you say, the things that used to be wrong and were the clear red flags have changed, because I get multiple messages from Amazon legitimately from different numbers as well. So even the thing of it's not the number in your phone book, it must be wrong. But this long con concept and this building up trust, Matt, can you explain for some people that don't know, the levels of the lengths that the banks and sometimes law enforcement have to go to actually convince people they're being scammed, because they don't want to believe that they're being scammed because they've been so manipulated for so long. You've seen a lot of that.
Oh yeah. I think the psychology behind this is really interesting. Erin and I have talked about this many times in the past, and there's a couple of people that we know that deal on the psychology side of what we're talking about that really want to do more work in this area. But as recently as I think it was maybe 2 months ago now, I had a victim who lost over $900,000. I traced it in front of him in his dining room with his wife next to him. I showed him where it went. I highlighted it. I explained it to him. I even gave him the hour-long typical fraud presentation I do for the elder community right in his living room. The next day, his son emailed me thanking me, and in the email saying that, hey, I think my father is my mother told me he's trying to take a HELOC out to continue a $200,000 invest into this thing because he's still that built into this scam network. So it's so hard to pull them away from it. And there's so many facets of the psychology of it, whether it's they're embarrassed about losing that much money, or they're just, it's almost like an adrenaline rush that they think they could potentially get the money back. There's so many things that really reel them back into these things, and it's beyond law enforcement. The show of force of us being in uniform manner and doing it sometimes isn't enough, honestly. I know Erin's done it before too, where we send patrol guys to a house to talk to a victim to go, hey, listen, you're in the middle of a scam in Idaho. We need you to break from this. And it doesn't seem like it's enough, honestly.
And I think that really speaks to the advanced psychological techniques being used by these scammers, that our enemy cannot be underestimated. They've created scripts that they've been using for 5 years. They're tried and true. They're totally functional. They work, and it makes it almost impossible for us to break victims out of that mindset by the time we get there. And that's a huge part of this, is by the time Matt gets there and is able to present this, that person's been groomed for 4 months.
Yeah, and so psychologically manipulated. It's the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, though, Erin, too. I know we're probably not going to talk about this, but the AI and investment of AI into this, reading someone's
Matt,
chat logs.
I've
You
literally
have it?
I've wrote this down going, because you're saying,
It's going to
Erin,
come up.
5 years worth of scripts. What would you do with that script? You would
Right.
put it in, and I would put in your
Prompt
social
it.
media profile, and I would say, what's the best way that I can speak to Matt about this? What are
Right.
the issues that are important to Matt today for
Right.
this? And you can just imagine, like, the resource, they've just 100x'd their potential resource pot. Even profiling Nick Furno, we did a live demonstration at Seas London. We were like, here's a spreadsheet of people that we've got from like some charity donation bucket. Please go through and profile these people and put them in ranked order for their addresses that live in the most expensive areas. And like literally live, we are doing profiling,
Wow.
showing it in 90 seconds. All of a sudden we have a list. And it's like, if that's what someone without in motivations
easy.
can do, it's because I was going to ask you to go, what do we think are the conditions that lead to this? And like I'm conscious that we're talking about this all very friendly and lighthearted, but this is like harrowing. We talked earlier on before the show started. Like one of the most horrific LinkedIn posts I just saw recently, the news article about a teenage 15-year-old boy. I have a 16-year-old son, who's 16 in a couple of days, 15 right now, and that's why it resonated. Within 2.5 hours of being extorted, he took his own life. Like, these are not someone losing a couple of dollars who should have known better, and they were on some dodgy website. Because that was the old cliche. There was a bit of victim shaming. I know when we first started working, one of our first projects at Asset Reality was working with MetaMask to try and deal with the epidemic of the amount of people losing assets. And there was almost that study being done to go, why does it keep happening? And I remember there was almost a slightly, I don't want to say that law enforcement or law firms weren't sensitive. Well, no, they weren't. A lot of people weren't very sensitive to this. And they were like, what do you mean? No, silly person. They shouldn't have done that. And it wasn't sensitive. But now you're realizing this is not someone trying to make 100x return overnight. This is someone that is being horrifically manipulated and targeted. I mean, these aren't one-off cases, are they?
No. I don't know if you guys know Paul Raffaele, right? Obviously, with everything that goes on with him, I think people like him and Ryan Montgomery, he was just on the Sean Ryan podcast recently talking about stuff like this because of all the sextortion, which is totally different from pig butchering, obviously, but in the same context, they're using the same manipulation techniques, the same rapport building techniques, the same AI enhancements for their technology and their tools. So all these things are kind of playing off one another at this point. I think scammers have recognized that there's the psychology is the end to all the money that they need to get.
Well, and I will say that in August of 25, we got confirmation from International Justice Mission that their study shows that
Correct.
sextortion is coming out of these scam compounds as well. I think we really need to look at these scam compounds and these syndicates as the enemy, and their flavor of this time is pig butchering and increasingly sextortion. But they're going to keep pivoting. They're going to keep changing their ways to figure out how to not only steal our money, but be disruptive. This is a bigger campaign than just finance.
Right. Yeah, and that's precisely why I enjoy having these conversations under the asset recovery banner, because exactly to your point, I mean, most people, this has been brought to their attention. If the ICO boom is the thing which they'll scam you, it'll be the ICO boom. If it's targeting teenagers for sextortion, it'll be that. Like you say, it's whatever the passive least resistance is, or has the highest ROI. And I think also what's interesting is that I don't know if either of you have seen the movie. There's a French movie called Only the Animals, 2021. It was released. I'd really encourage you to watch that. And it's a bit of a character study, and it goes back to showing you the scam factories through the life of the people who live in Ivory Coast. And this was sort of and again, we go back to, we've just got new tools, but the methodologies are exactly the same. And these kids are paying for a better life. They are paying to be trained to get a job in the scam factory locally, to go after I think they call them the pigeons, and they're going after their pigeons. And it's basically, they keep feeding them up. And they are literally, and you have like entire rooms full of people sitting on laptops. But then again, they're being extorted as well, but to go after. But the whole point of the show is it goes back to the guy doesn't believe it and refuses to believe it. And even when he's in the depths, and then there's the catastrophic knock-on effect, because then he's lying in his business. Then he has problems with tax and finance and his family fall. And again, it's not just one person doing one thing. But Erin, I think that Shamrock in particular, and you with your impressive travels, has really sort of mask the fact that this is no longer now, even that Ivory Coast example, they were still there of their own free will. They were going there in those cases. And I think it is important to separate those categories. There are people who know what they're doing and they know they're doing fraud and they just think it's rich people far away. It's not a big deal. But I think now we're starting to see, because the ROI is so high for these gangs, we're starting to move into an actual human trafficking issue to fill these compounds in the same way that people have been trafficked for centuries to carry out activities. Could you tell us about what you've sort of seen over the last 6 to 12 months and how this is sort of growing?
Yeah, this is a real piece of, it's just a real passion point for me, because what we're seeing is the amount of money that can be made in this industry is beyond anything anyone could have ever imagined. So the amount of wealth they have enables them to pay off governments, pay off armed militias, anything that they want to do to make this happen, they're able to get happen. And the difference, what we're seeing is that there is so much need for work globally. I just came from Kenya, where there's something like a 70% unemployment rate. And these are educated people with skills who want to work. And when I was in Uganda on this trip, I spoke with some of the trafficked workers from Uganda. And they're saying, I was making $100 a month. And a fellow Ugandan came in and said, I can get you a job making $1,200 a month. And they're 23 years old. And I can make in 6 months what I could make in Uganda in 5 years. Like, they're saying to their brother, literally, I'm going to go try this. I can try this or I can die poor in Uganda. And that's what we're seeing, is that the amount of wealth really enables bad actors to be able to exploit people in very inhumane ways.
Could you give us a sense of the numbers, Erin? Just as for those that don't know, like when you're talking about like scam compounds, what are we talking about in terms of like average amount of people working in one of these like factories or offices or whatever it is, just to help people understand it?
Yeah, definitely. They call them compounds, but the people inside, they try and sell it as a company, that they work in these companies. And it takes a lot of people to run these companies. We're talking about numbers in 2023 estimated by the UN were 120,000 in Cambodia and 120,000 in Myanmar. We know it's a lot bigger than that now. That was before they were building, they were expanding KK Park. They were building more and more compounds. And the fact is, to do this work right now, without using AI, they need a lot of humans to do that. And so they're bringing them in from really developing nations that cannot afford to go get these people or go or fight for them. So we're seeing really increased numbers from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya. They're really exploiting countries where the delta is so big between what you make there and what we could promise you. But the fact is, when they get there, there is no job. They are led into a compound with men with AK-47s, and they're forced to scam 16 hours a day.
And it is very similar then to I've seen the football scams in Africa where the promising kid is promised, a good job, and they pose as Manchester United scouts, they pose as AC Milan scouts and Barcelona scouts. And I think you sort of think that the level of imagination of the cruelty that goes into this. And then, but as you made a really important point, the countries don't have the resources to tackle this. I mean, this takes us on to what we mentioned at the very sort of top of the show was like the infrastructure to deal with this is an asset recovery problem. And if we've just looked at 20 or 30 years of only recovering 1% of illicit financial flows, the figure's debated, but we can agree it's a small fraction. You've now got this growing crime type, growing fraud type, this engine fueled by easier, cheaper technology and AI, fueled by rising prices and crypto assets, making the ROI even more attractive. And the backdrop is you walk into the local police station in Uganda or Kenya or in Connecticut or in San Francisco, and you say, I've lost $100,000. Or you say in Uganda, I think my niece has been tricked and she's got on a plane. It's like, did she get on the plane of her own free will? Yeah, that's not a case. No one's ever going to look at that case ever again. And it's only if you have this sort of top-down look. I remember seeing some of the photographs that were shared online of the satellite pictures of the compounds changing for people to truly get the idea of the scale of this. And I think on that point, Matt, then to maybe for those that, again, don't truly sort of understand this flow, could we get your experience as someone in law enforcement now of like, you know, the infrastructure and the component parts? Like walk us through a bit of a 101, the cases that you hear about. What does it actually look like from a, say, a victim in a law enforcement, you know, perspective in the US? Like we hear all the headlines about crypto ATMs and the banks and like what is I know there's no such thing as a normal case. What's the most common thing you're saying?
No, there's definitely like a typology for these specifically. I don't think kiosks really touch these very often at all. These are segregated. Those are mostly like Nigerian or Indian based, I think, a lot of times. These ones that we deal with are traditionally people who have TradFi accounts are convinced by their scammer to onboard to usually like crypto.com or some other company. They wire their assets over. They purchase ETH or USDC or USDT. And then within the on-chain app, which is part of Crypto.com's app, there's a Web3 browser in there, and that's where they put the investment page. And from that point, the people think that they're transacting on this investment page, but it feels realistic because they're on a US-based, exchange basically. So it seems realistic and it seems trustworthy because you have those components involved. And from there,
so where that's really interesting. So where's the investment page? That's on the Crypto.com site?
No, so that's what's really interesting, right? And that's why people get confused about this. And when they come to us or they come to the patrol level, patrol is confused because there's components to how this thing functions, and people don't realize there's a lot of facets to it. So every crypto company has a DeFi wallet, right? You have the base one or you have the on-chain one for whatever. So within those apps, there's a Web3 browser, so you can transact on DeFi within the app. So you're using Crypto.com's
it's the browser within the app, yeah.
So they get that investment page from their scammer and they say, hey, listen, my uncle at Goldman Sachs has this great investment. Uncle John says that he has this idea and he's getting returns like crazy. Go to this investment page, and the investment page looks realistic, blah, 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 right? So they take that investment page, they put the link into the Web3 browser and on the on-chain app. And the minute they transact from their account to this investment page, gone. And that's when we're trying to chase our tails.
Yeah, and again, it's like the old invoicing fraud, but on steroids, where you just borrow the logo and it looks like you're paying the utility provider and you're not. And so what is, and that is an important thing to separate, because so much has been written lately about crypto ATMs. I was asked for a quote at a New York Times thing a few weeks ago, and I'd mentioned that it seems an easy on and off ramp, but when I think about some of the other much more informed people than me about the topic, the general advice is don't get swept up too much in that. It's a fraction. The majority of this goes through mainstream exchanges and mainstream retail exchange. Would you agree with that? And why is it that ATMs seem to be getting so much attention at the minute?
I mean, again, because they're two segregated pieces, I think that they're a very critical part of onboarding for scams generally, but it's just a different version of scams. You can't, you're not going to get the level of transaction through an ATM that you can through a Coinbase. Or
it could be the likes of a one and done, and for those that don't know, the vast majority of ATMs are not like bi-directional. It is put your cash in, get the crypto out.
Right.
Okay.
So it's traditionally the cash out boards are usually Canada, Mexico, and outside the U.S. allow withdrawal, but in the U.S. I don't know of any that allow withdrawal. So
yeah, because they just create a big pain for themselves, aren't they, from a regulatory point of view? Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there are some significant differences why the pig butchering is a more substantial crime type here. It's because of the actual amount of money that is being transferred over time. So our victims don't realize until the end that they have been scammed. Whereas with a Bitcoin ATM, you understand pretty quickly after you get off that Bitcoin ATM that, oh my God, I just got scammed. And then they can go to someone like Matt Hogan, who might be able to help you in real time.
Mhm.
And it's usually a substantially less amount of money than we're dealing with in pig butchering crimes.
Yeah, and pig butchering too, you're going to get the small incremental increases. So as the investments or as the returns increase, the investment increases, and they will allow you to withdraw occasionally for the very, for beginning months or so to make it feel like it's more realistic. Okay, I have control over my funds, I can withdraw. And when that happens, at some point they're going to cut that off. And that's when the investments really start ramping up and they start taking HELOCs out and also the crazy stuff people are doing.
One last thing about the ATMs, I think the reason why there's interest in them right now is it's something that you can see, feel, and touch in the United States.
Yeah.
And so it enables people to think, oh, we're actually doing something about this when we start talking about it and exposing that those are scam machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the UK is having the same thing with immigration at the minute. It's like, rather than trying to solve the massive, large problem, it's like, just stop the new boat arriving. And there's been a whole, as a lot of my counterparts in the various UK sort of financial crime think tanks, they sort of roll their eyes, going, "Oh, great, we're going to solve the small boat problem. That's going to fix everything." And I agree with you. It's like the big yellow shiny things, like, we take that seriously. Great, that's 0.05% sorted. But what about the rest? And I mean, I would love to get both of your perspectives on it. Let's say, like, let's follow the chronology that you just sort of set up, Matt. That, someone's been that initial victim. They've been reached out through social media platforms, which we'll get onto in a second. But whatever the first touch point has been, they're caught and they're in that sort of death spiral, and they're parting with their cash and their money's going out the door. What does it look like in those cases? We all know about the cases where there just isn't enough resources to go around. We can talk about that in a second. But for those cases where you can start the investigation process and you can potentially recover assets, I'd love to hear from both of you and just what your experiences have been like in terms of actual recovery prospects, working with all of the different third parties. What does that look like today, as of sort of November, October 2025? Like, what are we seeing in this quarter? As in, is it getting much better than it was years ago? Like, I'm just keen.
No,
the sharp intake of breath doesn't fill me with confidence.
No, so it's actually interesting because Erin and I, even though we're on two separate ends of the U.S., the way we function was very similar. The way we recovered assets is very similar. The same process in courts and everything was very similar, which is kind of what really helped us connect, I think. And so from us, what we've done is we have to send local search warrants to these exchanges to say, hey, I've located assets on your platform that belong to my victim. I can't do the big seizures like DOJ does. I can't take the whole wallet, right? I can only take my victim's asset and pull it out. So that process takes a lot of time, unfortunately, because the hurdle for us was I don't have an awesome prosecutor a lot of times like Erin, where I can go to it and she gets it. I have to find someone who understands it, and I have to really, really break it down to a simplistic level. And that takes time and energy away from getting the money back and from us doing our other jobs. And there's just not enough of us to do that with the level of money being taken and the amount of cases coming in. And on top of it, you have, again, the basic patrol level not grasping the reality of these being scammed. I have a message from a friend from just happened the other day, 10/22. A person reported one of the job placement scams, and they were paying into the scam to get, part of their job was to do a certain amount of tasks per day. The investigator wrote it off as non-criminal, and they wrote it's $40,000 worth of money gone, right? So, and non-criminal, I'm like, how is that non-criminal? But that's the hurdle we're coming across now.
I think that, Erin, I actually sent you a text message that I'm actually bringing up so I can quote it exactly, because just exactly to that point, I'm not going to take credit for it. It was actually Daniel from Europol when we were sitting in the 9CRC event in Vienna. It was the big actually Adam Culpa was there from he was across from your neck of the woods as well, and there was a lot of practitioners in the room, and I absolutely loved Daniel's quote where the moderator was asking about the big emerging threats and the big sort of like existential problems in dealing with crypto assets in terms of those that are used for illicit activity. And his quote was because I actually wrote it down and sent it to Erin as I was listening to the guy going, oh my God, the guy's spot on. And he says, someone was asking about the things that he's worried about. And they were talking about all the new technical advances. And he says, I am not worried about mixers, bridgers, or swaps. I am more worried about the basics. We're a decade late into law enforcement agencies still not taking crypto seriously. And we're still having to convince judges, convince investigators, convince superiors. It's been 10 years. He said there should be a call to policymakers and organizations to focus on hiring, training, and retaining personnel to tackle this issue. I was like, I was like clapping it.
Well, I'd love to talk about the retaining personnel piece because I just talked about this on my All Shamrock meeting that I showed year one of the crypto conference and sitting up there. And I pointed out like the OGs. We've got Kyle Armstrong, we've got Beth Bisbee, we've got Kelsey Dean, and we've got Aaron Fricoli from Binance, right? They're all exactly where they were. All of those people are in the same job that they were. Then you go to the panel of law enforcement, and it's Brad Smith from React, who went to Chainalysis, and we've got Gavin Souther, who from Canada, who went to Binance, and we've got me, who's running a nonprofit, and we've got John Scharf, who just went to TD Bank. We've got a terrible brain drain. I say things as they are, and it's this. It is absolutely this. Here is the problem. We are not appreciating the fact that crypto is how bad guys move money. We are not appreciating this is a much bigger than fraud. This is very much a national security issue. We are not appreciating that we need to invest time, resources, training, and tools. And we need to also work on our bedside manner, that when people come in to report a crime like this, we take them seriously, we lead with empathy, we get the information from them that we need to get so that we can act immediately to go after those assets, because nobody knows better than you two on this call that this is a speed game. And when people show up and try to report, we need to be ready within 10 minutes to have somebody looking at it who knows how to do this work. And until we start to take crypto seriously as the means of moving illicit assets, we are way, way behind. And the criminals continue to run circles around us and steal a generation's worth of wealth.
I use a video. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's Michael K. Williams. It's a Vice video. He's talking to a dark web scammer. And it's these kind of hoodlum guys with their hoods up, their black faces, and he has a gun on a table, and they're talking about how they make money now. He takes a bag, he dumps a bunch of credit cards on the table. They're used credit cards that they get off the dark web. And I'm like, I use it as a presentation model, and I go, well, how did they get those credit cards and the credit card numbers through the dark web? How do you buy on the dark web? Bitcoin. And the video's from like 2017. So I said to the guys, I said, the point of the video that I stop it at, the bad guy goes, I'm beyond Coke money. And then in that moment, I turn around to people and I go, if you don't think the guy on the corner who's doing robberies isn't involved in money laundering or financial crime, and especially crypto now, you're wrong. And you should be putting energy into that particular area. And if you're not doing that, you're wrong.
Yeah, we're seeing now this growth and this. I try and use the opposite example to what you guys are using in terms of scale. I use the asset seizure scale. It's like if you go to a country and you say, I've just seized 50,000 pelicans. You clearly have a pelican problem if you're seizing that much of it. And if you have Lo's going to kill me going, could you not have thought of a better thing than a pelican? This is how you know this is unscripted. But when we work at country level, and a lot of countries that go on the FATF grey list, or countries that just want assistance through different funded projects, and they'll say we're trying to build infrastructure, and you're like, okay, what's the response to international requests for seizing assets in crypto cases? Maybe this is some of the places where the exchanges are domiciled, for example, and it's like, we don't have a crypto problem. And it's like, we don't have crypto assets. And to your point, Erin, about agencies saying we don't need to invest in this because it's not an issue here, and you're like, but crypto seizures are outstripping regular asset seizures. I've given up on what the number is. It was more than 1,000 to 1 the last time I checked. I was like, it's now flipped. So when people talk to us about, oh no, you work in asset recovery, physical assets and digital, you go, no, it's now the biggest category of asset by value. So if anyone's building a seized asset system, it's got to be nearly 90% crypto, and then the rest will be other assets by value. So how people can say that it's not a massive issue and it's no longer a category. It's like someone going to the police saying, someone's just robbed me. Oh, well, we don't do robberies. Was he a left-handed? Yeah. If he's a left-handed robber, we don't do those ones. It's like this segregation, because it's not being, but do you think, like, what is the reason for that? Because I can't recall any other crime type, and maybe I'm being naive, but any other crime type where we're having to, is it because of the polarizing attitudes about crypto itself that we're not just seeing this as, it's like no one debates credit card fraud. We used to have fiat and only had fiat. Then we had credit cards and online banking. So if you've got online banking or credit card credit card fraud, no one's debating that takes place. But there still seems to be that disbelief around crypto. And Matt, to your point, people like not believing they're making that much profits at it and not believing these are actually crypto enabled. What do you guys think is the reason for that, like almost skepticism, or is it something completely different?
Go ahead, Erin. I know you got something for this.
I definitely do. They're scared. They're scared.
Sure,
People are old dogs. And this crypto seems hard and it seems confusing. And it seems like I don't want to deal with this. And if I'm local, I can just say, oh, this is for the feds. I can just slough them off on the feds. And the fact is, the feds don't have the resources for that. And that's really not how it should be working. Yeah. Local law enforcement should be assisting victims on the local level, and we should be reporting that stuff to IC3 so that the feds can make bigger cases, which is what they should be doing. But the fact is, and I think the both of you will agree with me on this, is crypto is actually a lot easier to recover than all these other types of it's much easier to recover Tether than it is to recover a boat. And so the fact is, there are opportunities through our crypto coalition to make this easier on you. And the relationships that we're starting to build in this group with our relationship with Asset Reality, for you don't have to even custody it. We will help you with that. Yeah. Codex, you don't have to find out how to serve.
You have to build this stuff yourself from the ground up. It's there.
Exactly. Yeah. That there are some really impressive emerging business models that are actually there to help make this easier on victims. And the fact is, if we got up to speed on this, there could be a lot more recoveries. And if we started building an attitude of not stigmatizing people who have had their money stolen with them and getting them to come in quickly, more work could be done and more assets could be recovered.
Yeah, I think I would say it's like a multi-prong problem that we're dealing with, because you have bureaucracy of government generally, right, that gets in the way, because you have to jump through 9 hurdles and go through chains of command to get things approved. And then you have people on patrol that aren't taking the cases or aren't coding them right in our system, so we don't get notified of them in the first place. And then you have all the procedural things involved in the asset recovery itself. You have too many, again, more hurdles to cross over. Who's custodying it? What's the procedure? Like all these things. And we don't have the time to, like, I can't build that and save people's money at the same time. It's just too much. So there needs to be, once something's been developed, like you're talking about, I feel like those people need to be sat down and let them assist in making that process easier, because they understand how to do this already, and we have the people available to do that.
So what do you both think, like absolute like whiteboard thinking, like what is the actual solution? Someone says, great, I'll give you whatever you want tomorrow. Is it a, like, because and it is true, when there never has been in the history of time this like decentralized currency. There isn't someone at the wheel, this the way the assets can move without borders, like we are in, if we're being kind to establishments for a second, this is I think it's a different issue of not accepting the scale of the problem, but the problem is enormous. And I agree with you, Erin. The ignorance part isn't a fair play, and it's not the right thing to do for victims. But if we acknowledge the fact that it is an enormous problem, because you can't compete with big private sector salaries. You will lose people out the door. You can't compete with, there is one Matt. So if Matt has to chase the prosecutor and Matt's getting 14 new cases every single day and he can only cope with 2-3 cases a day, for example, then there just is a resource issue. So if it's a blank sheet of paper, I always think about when a country has, like, it's hosting the Olympics, everything stops. They bring together a big, massive task force and everything gets done, and it gets done on time, because it can happen when there's the will to do it. When COVID happened, we can keep everybody indoors and we can give daily updates and we can share data at record speed. So we've proven we can do big projects. I mean, if you guys had your wish, like, what is the big solution? Let's just focus on the US for now.
Erin's got a whiteboard right behind her.
You can literally get a whiteboard behind you. So like, what is the thing? You can have, it's Thanksgiving, you can have whatever you want. What do you think would be the thing that would have the highest ROI? What big activity?
I want so what's happening in the US right now is everybody's got a task force. Everybody's got a working group. And so now we have new silos. So the new silos are our working group. And we're not going to tell you what our working group is doing, and you're not allowed to see inside our working group. So what I would do is I would figure out who the actual parties are that need to be sitting at the table that have the will and the ability to make change. And I would make sure that includes law enforcement, diplomacy, victim groups, NGOs, law enforcement, banking, crypto. And then we've got to divide and conquer. We have to divide and conquer. It doesn't make sense to have 7 working groups going after the same type of thing. Who wants to take on awareness? Great, you go do that. Who's going to take on educating banking frontline about this? Who's going to take on getting resources in the hands of law enforcement and in all of these sectors, building a community where people have ability to talk about what's happening and really be heard. And so there are some obvious things that are needed. We need a better reporting system, period, end of story. And we need a reporting system that is vetted and that private industry also has access to if they can help with the analysis. With the brain drain of what's happening in US government, we cannot be expected to be the analysts that are going to figure all this out. And what we've seen, quite frankly, is journalists doing an amazing job. The biggest heroes in all of this are journalists who are out there piecing together stuff and pulling it apart. And so we need to have journalists at the table too. We need to have the subject matter experts. And that's what keeps frequently getting left out is, let's get all the big banks in a room and decide something. Well, do the big banks really understand what is happening to your cousin and your and somebody who just emailed me yesterday who lost $5 million and $2 million of it is a loan? Like, we need the actual problem getting raised to the highest levels where the people can make the difference. But we also need our frontline people like Matt and bank tellers talking about, well, this is what I'm seeing on the daily, and we've got to fix this. But at the end of the day, it is a divide and conquer strategy with accountability and appropriate finger pointing at the very industries that are enabling this and profiting off it.
Yeah, my simple ask was to have some God-fearing morale back everywhere, because it seems like people don't care about anything except their bottom line anymore, and not about their customer, consumer, or victim in the U.S. So I think people generally just need to have better morale and care about people more. Very simple.
It's a great point. I think that the quote that keeps sort of springing to mind is you can't manage what you can't measure, and it sounds like there's a management problem. And it's because it's not measured. So this issue that, again, think of something like COVID, think of big disaster relief. There needs to be that centralized, and there is no accountability. No one's not getting elected because you didn't do a good job for victims. And it's certainly the same in the UK. Fraud's the biggest crime type now. If it's the biggest crime type, why has it not got the biggest response? Why has it not got the biggest awareness campaigns, Erin, to your point, the biggest education and outreach with, like, do you know how you stop kids getting scammed? Start talking to kids, for example. And we'll get into the platforms in a second. But yeah, I can't help but think that creating, and if I look at asset recovery on my side of the pond, we have decades of ineffective asset recovery. And the places that do it well, they all have one thing in common. There is one countrywide entity that is responsible for everything. All roads stop at the asset management office. So it doesn't matter if you are man, woman, or child, if you are prosecutor or judge or anybody, you're in the intelligence service. If you want to know about a seized asset in the Netherlands, you go to the asset management agency. That's it. And there's that accountability. And we don't need another task force, but it just seems like we need like one coordination center for everything to go into. And I can understand I can understand a logical gap between state and local and federal, but at least enable everybody. Otherwise, we're just going to be doing the same thing. Given the fact that we're not going to get what we want in our magic wand wish, unfortunately, anytime soon, let's sort of switch gears to what is possible, but is just not happening right now. And I think before we go into this libelous section of the show that I'm really looking forward to, it is worth pointing out we should sling rocks, because there are entities that are not doing enough, and there are that are trying to do some. And I think it's always important for those that don't have a lot of experience in crypto I'm going to speak for both of you, but you can certainly interrupt me. I mean, crypto isn't bad. It's an asset category that's being abused. It's a piece of technology. Exchanges, some have been bad, some have been better, some have got worse. Some have law enforcement liaison teams, some don't. Some have had good moments, some have had bad moments. The same in banks. But I also don't like the argument that banks do it, therefore it's okay if they do it. Again, it goes back to the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Erin, your point on tracing, the irony is we actually can stop this stuff. We can do things like burn and reissue with stable coins that we couldn't do when someone stole a purse or a handbag in the past. So, and then the industry that wants legitimacy could do more and fix itself. But switching away from crypto, every single thing we've talked about today and all of the enabled stuff has gone through massive billion-dollar technology platforms, multi-billion-dollar in some cases. When we first talked about this, Erin, about a year ago, you talked about trying to do outreach and trying to get in front of the starting point for most of these terrible atrocities, which usually is a social media platform of sorts. Or I can accept that it's hard for a phone provider to stop an SMS going through, but I have less sympathy for a social media platform that allows bad advertising and scam advertising. I've seen fentanyl adverts on certain social media platforms and things like that. What's been your experience, Erin? And then Matt, I'll come to you for your insights on this. But what's been your experience in the outreach you've been doing through Shamrock with the big platforms?
I was very polite for a number of years. I didn't sling any rocks. I tried to develop relationships, and I was told flat out by Meta that they didn't need a relationship with me because they're part of Tech Against Scams and they talk to the FBI. And so that's when I had to start throwing rocks, and not throwing rocks for mean, but in terms of calling out what we know to be true.
Yeah, being an advocate.
I've seen the internal documents from Meta. I know very well that they are aware of what is happening on their platform, and they are making business decisions to not correct it, or to correct it just enough to be able to sit on stage at major events and say they're working on it. But the fact is, they could fix this, and they choose not to.
And when you say they could fix it, for those that don't know, what sort of things would you expect? Let's say you're running it tomorrow. What are some of the easy wins that you think could be implemented?
Well, I'll tell you what, I do not know their technology. I don't claim to be an expert on their technology, but I do know that if they can get on stage and claim that they're reducing it in some ways, that means they do have the ability to do it. If they can write in internal documents that they'd like to dial down the number of bad ads and fake profiles, then they know how to do it. I don't have to be an expert on how to do it to say, you know how to do it, and you could dial it down to zero. Because you know who we don't see his image being used inappropriately is Mark Zuckerberg. We don't see Taylor Swift's image being used that way. That we know that if they want to take those off their platform, they can. And what they're not interested in when it's making up 10% of their revenue is dialing down the number of scam ads that appear on their platform.
So the scam ads make up 10% of the revenue?
$15 billion.
Wow. I didn't know it was that high.
That was just Reuters just did a release on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I mean,
are you familiar with the 17 strike rule? So that just was published this week, that it's in terms of people complaining. I think it is about inappropriate stuff for kids, or that they will allow someone to complain about it, or they will take 16 requests to take it down, and on the 17th they will finally take it down. Like, these are business decisions being made that are dangerous and unfair to people.
I was about to say, God, in the UK it was 3 strikes, and you guys invented baseball, so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how have I got this so wrong? And I suppose, like, I just saw the article last week was I know Coinbase, Binance, and others are back in the press again with different litigation. Coinbase had an AML fine. Binance, I don't know, guys, have you guys seen the news that victims are taking a class action in
Mm-hmm.
North Dakota, and then one in Manhattan? So, because the fact is, with blockchain technology, you can check every single transaction. You can't, in the same way a bank can't. Now, again, I'm very conscious that some crypto people who, crypto bros will hate what I'm saying right now. Because they'll say, well, the banks have done it. Yes, but they did, and they were rightly criticized for doing it. Just because one person speed or drink drives doesn't mean you get to do it as well. And it's like, no, HSBC quite rightly were dragged through the press for the Sinaloa cartel and the sanctions evasion and changing the names when the stuff was entered into the bank. And there's Netflix specials about it, and they should rightly wear that with shame that they did that. But with crypto technology, you can check all the transactions, and you can monitor every single transaction. And if you just have to go slower and earn less profits to check everything. And is that one of the messages, Erin? Is that, like, you could actually check every single advert? It would be very painful and be very expensive, but you could check. Do you think that's one of the reasons they're just saying that operationally we're too big, we do too much stuff, we simply just can't check everything?
Well, I think what the evidence shows is that they are accepting a massive amount of wealth from advertisers that they know to be scammy. So if we're still on Meta,
they could blacklist the scammer, or they could blacklist the advertiser.
Right, right. If we're talking about crypto exchanges, I see the sanctions again, not the sanctions, or the fines levied against them, and it feels a lot like a cost of doing business at this point. And
I've never seen a fine that isn't more than a couple of days' profit.
Right, and so I think that we've completely lost sight of consumers. And I never thought I would find myself being an advocate for consumers. But the fact is, there are so many individual people who are getting wrecked by this, that if this were something happening to the automotive industry would huddle up and would demand change. But I can't get your cousin to huddle up with Matt's kid's soccer coach, to huddle up with my neighbor and demand change, particularly because they're wrecked. They've been psychologically wrecked as a result of this. And so they need advocates like me. And unfortunately, it puts me in the position of having to call out people who I have had relationships with. That at some point, that the money that is going through your exchange is going to known pig butchering sites. And so you've got an obligation to make that stop.
Yeah, I just can't see that organizations that have, and I say Chatham House rule here because I don't want to get in trouble for anything. These are my thoughts alone. But but you have companies and businesses that are millions of dollars of profits that focus on technology, using AI to advance it and everything else. And they're collecting all these data points. Meta's listening to my phone call right now, as our conversation on my phone right now. So you can't tell me that they can't stop transactions from going through, from advertisements from going through, from payments. It just does not make rational sense.
It doesn't sound that it's not technologically possible. Like the sophistication of these algorithms and the technology to keep people addicted and hooked on these things. You'd imagine that 5% of that energy into, should we just stop this bad stuff happening over here?
Back to the morale. Like, hello, these people.
So what is going to change that? Well, what's both your guesses? Is that literally, a president takes an interest in it and all of a sudden it becomes a national thing? Or what do you think, if you were guessing as to what will lead to change? I'm happy to share my thoughts. I've always said from day one, the only thing I think will trigger massive change is that tragedy, is someone in a very, very senior position globally loses a family member or something happens. It was the same as one of the FATF speakers had talked really hard-hitting. He came into some criticism for it at a FATF event, not a FATF speaker, I should say, at a FATF event, where someone had said anecdotally, he says, no, Bitcoin is one terrorist attack away. as in, if someone was to repeat something, an atrocity like a 9/11, and it was fully funded by a crypto asset, you could see that some regulatory opinions could change very, very quickly and very aggressively. And I wonder, is it going to take that? Because like you said, Erin, you can't exactly group everyone together. I could always imagine if lots of people were being killed in the automotive industry, the families would come together and say, let's do a big class action and wipe out some of these. But this is what I mean. So does that exist for victims? Is there a chance that... But again, back to the original question first. I'm terrible for asking the question and then going off on a ramble. Let's stick with the first one. What do you think could be the big change factor that will change things positively? Let's be optimistic. What could it be if it were to happen? What do you think it might be?
It will not happen in this administration, period. You don't have these people standing right behind you on Inauguration Day and sitting next to you at massive dinners. So I would say...
Not anytime soon.
I don't think so. And in talking to banks, talking to people, they think that that Meta's too big, and so they leave the mudslinging to people like me, which is a really rough place to be.
Well, I don't think I'll be getting invited to the Christmas party anytime soon. Matt, what about you, sir? What do you think could be the change?
Yeah, I think you're honestly right on. Unfortunately, I feel like especially in law enforcement, the only changes that happen are written in blood a lot of times. So I don't know, what that looks like from here, but unfortunately, it's probably gonna be a significant loss to someone who's important that has some say in something,
or something that triggers that public outrage that it is.
Right.
Well, it's the old thing: if it bangs or bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
Like, no, money laundering doesn't lead a story. No, scams don't lead a story, sadly, or lead a headline.
The example I like here is like a move over law, for example. Like, there was no such thing as a move over law until you had a cop that got killed by a car that drove too close and didn't change lanes, right? They got smashed by a car driving by, and all of a sudden everybody's pissed off about it, and then they decide to make a law called the move over law. That didn't happen unless someone got killed. So unfortunately, I think things like this that have to happen in order to make functional change.
But you sort of, and unfortunately, that is a slightly depressing statistic, because it's like how many millions of victims and billions lost, and we've now got human it's like the case is pretty compelling enough for major change, and maybe that's a perfect way for us to sort of segue into the home straight, in that yes, we do now have this. Should be good news, but we're all going to be reserved and balanced about it. It's not going to be an overnight sort of panacea, but this focus on asset recovery from FATF certainly in some of the other jurisdictions will trigger massive changes. Do you think it's going to lead to big changes in the US? Do you think there's going to be a renewed focus on asset recovery in the US, or a change to the way things are being done? Like the big seizure recently, the multi-billion-dollar seizure that was announced. It sounds like that's sorted out all of the scam problems, surely, Erin?
But I think we need to be realistic about what that money was, and that wasn't scam money.
Yeah.
But
that's what I mean. Are they slightly cheeky headlines trying to bring that into because it certainly was presented to the international community that was a massive win in the fight against scams, is how it read internationally.
That's definitely how it read, but that's not really accurate. I mean, what we know is that money was stolen from a bad guy in 2020. That's what that money is. And then it sat. And then somehow it became in the hands of U.S. government. My victim started in 2021. That is not scam money. And so, unfortunately, it leads. There's a lot of performative. There's a lot of theater happening in clamping down on the scam situation, and that is not a recovery from scam compounds of victim money. And as a result, I had a lot of victims coming to me saying, "Where do I stake my claim? I want some of that $15 billion."
I got exactly the same. I got random people reaching me on LinkedIn. You guys do asset recovery? Where can I file can I get my money back off the back of this thing?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with it. I feel like I'll speak to Connecticut because we're lucky enough to have a good an administration with my agency and some others that have partnered with us at the legislative, and where we've actually put a seizure or asset seizure law in place. We never had a civil asset forfeiture law for probably 10 years or something like that. So we finally have something that's specific to crypto for pig butchering scams that went into effect in October. We haven't used it yet because we're still building out all the other bureaucratic stuff we were talking about. But unfortunately, I think it's going to take change agents like we're talking about now, people who are willing to kind of stick their necks out a little bit to offer ideas and kind of beg for forgiveness later when they, do something outside of their scope or whatever. But unfortunately, that needs to happen because there's no way to get around what's happening at the speed and pace it is unless someone does that. And I don't see how that's going to happen.
It certainly is. I think we're all unanimously agreed. It's challenging times ahead. It's not going to get easier. Let's try, because we all need to remain optimistic to keep trudging on through and doing what we're doing. Well, what is for your closing thoughts? What's the one thing that's given you, not the one thing? What is a thing that is giving you sort of hope or optimism or something you're seeing? Is there a step change in awareness or just good practice or something you want to call out that you think is something that definitely is worth people knowing about in the fight against these scams?
I definitely think people are a lot more familiar with the idea that there is a scamdemic going on. And one really specific thing I'd like to point out is, as part of Shamrock, we speak to survivors on Fridays. And we listen to them for the purpose of understanding the gaps where things could have been done better by law enforcement, banking, social media. And what we're seeing that victims are feeling supported by their banks in terms of, yes, they sat me down. Yes, the manager came over and explained to me that she thought this was a scam. What we're seeing is frontline banking really trying to lead with empathy and assist victims in understanding this is a scam. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not, but they are understanding the threat. So I think that is a piece of optimism. Yep.
We got an even simpler one. It's the people in this room right here. It's the Crypto Coalition. It's the people on the listserv that do this outside business hours for free, that put their necks on the line to do things outside the scope of their work in order to try and help people who are in need. So I'm thankful for that collective group as well as the listserv and what Erin's established really more than anything, because I've made a lot of friends in this community because of what she's done. And I think a lot of people misplace that and put it in other pockets. And I think it's really, Erin did a lot of this legwork for us. And I think I'm thankful for the people who I've found around the nation and outside the US that have the same feelings that we're all discussing today. And I'm thankful for them.
Oh, Matt, that's so nice.
It's legit.
He's a poet. He's a poet. He really, but it is true. A lot of us have been connected through to Erin, the work that you've done, and like I say, it is often the hardest job in the world is to say the thing that everyone else thinks, but no one has the courage to say because it's not the popular vote. So yeah, continuing the Thanksgiving theme. Yeah, I'm thankful for you doing that and doing the unpopular job at times. But as we say, I think we all sort of stay enthused and energized because every now and then you keep meeting people that are like, hey, I'm doing this because I saw the thing that you were doing, or I'm doing this in my corner of the world. The amount of people I meet on my travels that know you two I know you both, Matt, as well, like that know you guys is astonishing in different continents. So I think that's the thing. It's easy to feel browbeaten when you're only dealing with the outputs and the negative, and sometimes you almost have to zoom out and think like, right, where were we 2 years ago with this sort of stuff? Whereas now you could easily do a thing on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm having a virtual party and 1,000 people would turn up to talk because you're building these sort of massive communities. So yeah, I hope the two of you get some rest and get to spend some quality family time over Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful for you coming, taking an hour out of your day to come and talk to me. And yeah, I hope we sit down here in a year's time and we're just constantly pushing that elephant up the stairs, up the hill, because it's the right thing to do. Say, Matt, it's the moral and the right thing to do, and that's never a waste of energy.
Here I am, send me.
Our podcasts are for informational purposes only. They are not intended to provide legal, tax, financial, and/or investment advice. Listeners must consult their own advisors before making any decisions on the topics being discussed.